Oh no. Tripod, tripod. All the things I could be doing at 2 in the morning. Did not think that this would be one of them. So I am on my way to grab some indomie because that's what we're doing at 1:30 in the morning. Maybe this merits a bit of an explanation, but then again, I'm too old to have to explain anything about what I do to anyone these days. But I figured that there might be a couple of people who might be, like me, questioning whether or not it makes financial or mental or emotional sense to be spending $30 to be streaming a live concert at 2 a.m. So that is what we are doing today. But first, indomie.
Hear you whisper something happy in my ear. Just a sedative to make me disappear.
So admittedly, I was actually pretty close to like just not waking up for this and waiting for the video on demand version to come out in like however long it takes for them to do whatever it is they do to these things. I feel like when like quarantine first started, the whole like concert from your living room thing was like still kind of like cute and, you know, sign of the times. But at the same time, I feel like there will come a time and a place. Well, no, there will come a time, probably sooner rather than later. People are gonna get bored, right? And they're no longer wanting to watch Billie Eilish and her brother like do music from their basement or whatever for entertainment, right? You know, you have people who like, I don't know, I won't get into politics here, but you have people chomping at the bit to like do anything resembling normalcy, and they're not satisfied with our current new normal, right? And so, you know, music, concerts, events being one of those things. And so like, you know, so it's like interesting that, I mean, interesting but not surprising that, you know, it's a K-pop company that tries their hand at something that's a little more new normal, but still trying to resemble old normal. I think the intent here is born out of like I think an inherent knowledge from like the K-pop side of things that like K-pop is just not a genre where like you can have a whole bunch of like idols who their main craft is like singing and dancing and being extra, and then not have them do that. I can't imagine being a performer and being like, I'm literally performing, I'm used to performing right in front of like actual humans, and I feel like a lot of your energy probably is derived from that. And then now all of a sudden you have to do the exact same thing, like same format, except you're basically doing it in a Star Trek holosuite. I guess we'll see tonight, right? But I can't even imagine from the performers and how that even would like, how they would even calculate. But I think if anything, if there's ever an industry that spends an inordinate amount of time like production side on making not just like a concert like fancy and extra and whatever, but also really really capitalizes on that like human to fan to artist interaction, or whatever if you can qualify it as that in a concert, right? It'd be K-pop. And so yeah, I'd be curious to see how they do that. So those of you Indomie fans out there, I feel like I was very late on the Indomie bandwagon, and I feel like maybe the way I'm preparing this could be counted as sacrilege. You're supposed to like, you get like this like 2 seasoning packets, one's like liquid and one's like powder. Then like as the water boils, you're supposed to mix it all together and then like cook the noodles and you dump them in. And what I do is, because like I feel like the seasoning packet is just like too much for just one packet of noodles. Normal people would divide the seasoning packet in half and eat one packet of noodles, and I, however, I'm a glutton. I'm just like, no, take 2 packs and just, you know, save the seasoning packet from the second one for some unspecified later date, right? Because we'll definitely use this in the future. And then eat 2 bricks worth of noodles in one sitting, because that's what we do, right? So that's what we're doing tonight. And that's what we're doing at 1:30 in the morning. Anyway, for context, this will not be my first DBSK concert. By the way, I forgot to mention this is the DBSK concert that is happening on May 24th. They're technically called TVXQ in English language slang. I don't think anyone calls them DBSK anymore. I just feel super weird saying TVXQ because I just think it's a weird combination of letters. But anyway, it's not my first rodeo. I've seen DBSK live solo concert twice, both in Hong Kong, back-to-back years. Both times I flew to Hong Kong, not from the US, from Taiwan. So it wasn't that. It was still pretty ridiculous. It was a great show, both times, like undeniably so. It's interesting that like the schedule of performers for SM went from like SuperM to like NCT and then like whatever NCT subsidiaries there are, I can't keep track. And then like they go up to like their most Sunday of Sunday groups, most senior groups, which is DBSK. It's interesting just because like I think if I were like knowing nothing about SM's internal structure and the current schedule that they have or whatever, my assumption would be like, hey, this is an experimental format, right? It's hard, I would think, to perform like you're doing a concert in front of nothing but green screens. So like, you know, after all the trendy groups are out of the way, after we can like kind of push this project and get it like familiar to the largest base of people possible, let's then pull out our most experienced performers and then let them have a go at it and see what happens, right? So it's DBSK this week, Super Junior's coming next week. I feel like Super Junior's show is going to be totally different. I'm not paying money for that, even though I am a fan, but hey, a girl's gotta eat, right? I'm a huge DBSK fan. I'm not even gonna try to deny it at this point. You know, DBSK is my ride or die, has been for 10 years. I missed out on my like Backstreet Boys NSYNC phase when I was a kid, and so this is just like, making up for lost time essentially. Right. So we have our indomie. I'm gonna grab some water because I gotta stay hydrated. And half an hour before I get started. So between then and now, I'm going to eat my noodles and set up my smart TV so that we can stream this on the large screen at very low volume because the rest of the house is sleeping. So I'm realizing that on this channel I haven't talked much about K-pop, even though I've sung a lot of K-pop. But I started following K-pop in high school, like late high school. And DBSK was the first group I followed. And if you guys know anything about, I graduated high school in 2010. So when you're listening to this, you know literally anything about K-pop history, you know that 2009, 2010 was not a great time to be a TVXQ fan. For those of you not in the know, go Wikipedia that. I feel like my fan loyalty has shifted here and there throughout the years. Although it has stayed firmly lodged in the SM camp. I don't really know why. But really I feel like the reason why I've been sticking with K-pop for so long, for 10 years, is because a good chunk of those years, like a little less than half, but like a good, my college years were spent writing for a K-pop news site called soulbeats.com. So back when like websites and blogs were like the one place where you could like get anything K-pop related, fan culture wasn't really quiet. It was far more one-sided than it is now. So you get most of your like most of your like K-pop content from like blogs and stuff. And so Soulbeats was one of those blogs. And its take on K-pop news was a little bit different in the sense that like it was more focused on long-form editorial pieces that talked about like socio-cultural issues in K-pop. And so like, this was around the time when I was in college and just taking courses in my major, which was East Asian Studies. And it was like, for me, I was like 17, 18, and it was like the coolest thing in my head to like be able to like look at something as fluffy and frivolous as K-pop, but also be like, but this has a deep meaning. And so being able to like, I guess, I don't know, to give it more credit than I guess maybe it's due. I think the reason why I stick with K-pop for so long is because I started off as a fan looking at it through this like super serious academic lens, which like I guess lends it some legitimacy. I don't think really that kind of like mindset is anything too like too special now. I feel like pop culture now naturally gravitates towards being discussed and analyzed in like a socio-cultural context anyway, just naturally. I just think people are geared that way when they think about pop culture now. And so maybe a mindset like the one I had when I was like late teens, early 20s is not that novel, but it was for me at the time. And I think that really helped to kind of like, I don't know, during like some very formative years, cementing, a very, again, fluffy, frivolous kind of like subculture into part of my life. So that's the story. Again, I feel like I'm definitely really old for like K-pop fan standards with the TV change. What you like is what you like, guys. And I think anyone, regardless of age, is gonna be a fan of something or like have a hobby or be really into something that feels a little, whatever, immature or, frivolous or time-wasty or like, something that like maybe, could you be doing better things with your time than like, and money than like live streaming a concert that is like being taped live from like a Star Trek holosuite at 2 in the morning? Yeah, for sure. Like there are definitely wiser decisions you can make, but like that's not what life is about, guys. Not all the time. And if you're not convinced by that, if y'all have ever seen like grown men who are fans of sports teams, it's the same thing, and no one criticizes them. So, fangirl on. I'm gonna go with it. Anyway, a little bit of note for tonight. So, I don't want to get in trouble with the SM legal gods who have already made it abundantly clear that they don't want any part of this being broadcasted to non-paying customers. So, what I'm gonna do is I am going to turn this off for the concert. So sorry, you'll have to shell out your own $30 or find your own bootleg version. And then I'm gonna go to bed after this like a normal person and maybe do some reflective debriefing remarks tomorrow when I look and feel like a normal person with hopefully some sleep behind me. Anyway, for those of you who clicked on this thinking that this would be like a way to catch a concert without actually paying for the concert, I'm sorry, this is not that video. Those of you considering watching any future beyond live, I think is how they're branding this kind of line of concerts in the future. I hope that, because I feel like, if this goes well, this would actually be a really great model, not just for SM to continue with, and not just for K-pop companies to continue with, but for like, perhaps it's a good model for pop artists around the world, which is, I think, perhaps SM's goal. Now, whether or not that assumption is well-founded is another matter in itself, and I think I'll have more to say about that tomorrow. Ooh, by the way, since we're on the topic, sorry, I was going to show you the copyright notice just flashed on the screen, just as I was saying that, just as to emphasize my point, but I think it's starting now. So what you'll see is like, oh my goodness, this is like the most bizarre thing. They have like this these 3 screens and then 1 screen on top, and it's all like people's like FaceTime cameras. So you're seeing like the faces of a whole bunch of people. It's so red, guys. People are wearing red. That's super cute. I did not dress up for the occasion. I wore my old Model Congress shirt and Uniqlo comfy pants. Like I can't even tell what they are, but they're like little red, like, I don't know, cones or pins like on the floor. And then there's like a legit rectangular stage with stairs on the side. I'm going to bid farewell for now while I finish my noodles and wait with bated breath on this. I see some people with like their light sticks, which I also own. I'm like contemplating whether or not I should get it. I'm not gonna do that. I have dignity. I am an adult. We'll see. I feel like I'm feeling very optimistic about this. Not just because I paid $30 and I'm sacrificing sleep and insanity for this. You're not an SM fan for 10 years without having some like trust in their product. So I have more thoughts on this. I feel like a lot of those thoughts will get refined as tonight goes on. But for now, I will leave you at that, and we'll catch up tomorrow when I look like a human. So, woo! So the concert just ended, but it looks like there's like a commercial break of some sort before they go on to this surprise live where they're, I guess, taking live questions. My question is, it's almost 4 a.m. How much longer am I gonna have to stay awake for this, guys? Guys, I'm tired. That said though, I'm quite satisfied. This was good. I enjoyed this more than I thought I would. I also took a lot of notes, so lots to say, tomorrow. I don't know if I'll make it through this surprise live. Guys, it's 4:15. The birds outside are chirping. I'm going to bed. Alright, we're back in the bedroom corner again, in our most familiar and natural state, including my face. So it's the day after. I did get some sleep last night, thank goodness. But I also took some notes from last night. I figured it'd be good to do like a quick debrief of last night's concert and some some remarks. And so I think the two questions that I have that I want to be able to address are, number one, is something like this model of this live stream, high production value, paid concert, is this something that can be adopted for non-K-pop artists or K-pop artists outside of SM in the long run? And number two, which is probably the question you're all here for, was this worth paying $30 for? And so I don't think you can really answer the second without answering the first. So let's talk about that. I think Western artists have been doing a lot of live concert performances over the past couple of months, but they've all taken form in kind of the let's live stream my basement studio or my living room, whatever, or my piano in my backyard. I think Elton John did that for something. There's some element of that feels very homegrown and very much organic, and very much kind of has that vibe of we're all hunkering down in our houses, and so there's this very, very aggressively authentic sort of layer to that kind of format, that this kind of live high production value concert that you're paying money for doesn't have. I think some people could look at a concert like this beyond live format and be like, this is such a charade. This is clearly an entertainment company who is so married to the idea of this high production value, gimmick, that they have to take that format and they have to transplant it into this new thing, and they can't be authentic and just have idols, I don't know, play guitar in their living rooms or whatever, just like these Western artists are doing. And I think one kind of big counter argument to that is the fact that those living room concerts, I think, will never not be free. I think one really big aspect of that kind of living room concert sort of thing is the fact that I think people will always expect for that to be an act of charity, right? It doesn't take much money to pull off, have a camera and set up in your living room and you just play guitar and live stream yourself, right? People do that on Instagram or whatever all the time. And so if that is then a substitute for concerts, right? Concerts which are for most artists the main source of revenue for them. And so that's a huge loss of money. But you can't charge for something like that. I feel people were up in arms about SM charging $30 for this concert live stream to begin with, if only because the precedent that's been set for other concert live streams was that they were free. And I think there's always going to be that expectation. I'd imagine there's a lot of folks who are not familiar with K-pop and who see this Korean K-pop company charging people money to live stream, be like, man, what a capitalist institution. But the truth of the matter is that not being able to do concerts for artists is a huge loss of income, and you have to supplant that somehow. I think one thing that SM has been consistent about over many, many years is the idea that they've taken full ownership of the K-pop model that they, in a sense, have kind of pioneered and perfected to a certain extent. And the one thing that's really admirable about that is the fact that they've never really tried, or I mean, never asterisk, there have been times, but I don't think they've really ever been oh, our goal is to emulate how Western pop artists do pop. It's always been we have our own K-pop Korean way of doing pop, and we do it well. We have our own system, and there are certain advantages to that system that other pop entertainment fields don't have. And so if it's something that we do well, then why not be a leader in that aspect? And I think that's kind of what SM was really trying to go for here. This idea of being an industry leader in these kind of AR, paid high production at home concerts. And that makes sense to me because I think having seen a concert like this, this sort of format really plays really, really well to K-pop idols' strengths, and for one big reason, and that is K-pop idols, I think more so than Western artists, are really, really good at performing in front of cameras. So K-pop artists, generally speaking, they perform, whenever they release a new album or have a new single, they'll perform live on television 3 times a week. There's 3, maybe 4 weekend live music shows that they perform on, and so there's a small audience, recording audience, a studio audience during those shows, but by and large they're playing towards the
the camera. Western artists don't do this with nearly as much regularity as K-pop artists do, because they do that not only 3 to 4 times a week, but also every week during their promotion cycle. Whereas Western artists, I imagine they might just have like a one-off on like the late night shows, and then maybe do an SNL thing if they're really, really big, and then that's it. And so like in terms of playing towards a camera, Western artists don't do that nearly as much. They play more to like live audiences, because I think tours for Western artists are much more extensive because they play more cities. But K-pop artists are really, really trained towards performing towards the camera, and that's exactly what this sort of like beyond live concert format is. I think all artists benefit from like playing in front of live people. I think there's something as a performer that will always like, you know, draw something out of you, but these K-pop artists are also really good at getting that same effect when they're playing in front of a camera. And so what you saw during this concert was like, you know, I think there's something inherently awkward about like playing towards an audience of literally 0 people, but they did it really well because they were used to playing towards a camera. And I think, again, just from that alone, a format like that really plays on the strengths of their current, like, of who they have. So to return the question of like, is this kind of format suitable or, you know, desirable for non-K-pop artists? You know, again, just to really grossly oversimplify the question here, it really depends on like which Western pop artist you're talking about. I think if you're someone who like has consistently always had live concerts that are very high production value, and you're someone who like plays well to a camera and like, you know, is able to take ownership of all of that, I think this might not be a bad avenue to explore. But I think the other thing that really will come into play is the reception from the audience, right? Are your audiences going to be down for this, something like this? And I think that comes down to like my second question, which is, was this worth paying $30 for? And for me, staying up until 2 a.m., oh gosh. And I think to answer that question very simply, within just the context of like these SM entertainment beyond live sort of things, if you're someone who's like thinking, oh, should I watch like a Super Junior concert next week? Should I pay money for that? If like another group does another live concert, should I pay money for that? If you are a casual fan of a group, there's really no difference between watching this and then watching like a DVD recording. However, if you're someone who like is really into a group and you're like, it finds the idea of like experiencing a certain time and space with a performer to be really, really like meaningful to you, if you think it's really cool to be able to kind of like, you know, interact in that space, then yeah, I mean, I think there's something that's kind of neat about it, that feels somewhat memorable. And I think as someone who's been to like DBSK concerts in person, and then comparing this experience, I realized there was more similarity in the experiences than I had originally thought. I can't really put my finger on why or how, but I think if it's like a group that you really like and you would see a concert with them if they were in your city otherwise, and you have some disposable income, then, you know, why not? But I think to expand the discussion a little bit to like, would anyone pay $30 for like a Lady Gaga concert to stream in their house? I think this is more a question of how do lay audiences perceive the value of performance art, right? If they think of something, and as well as like the nature of things on the internet, you can think about it like this. Like once upon a time, before music streaming services were a thing, people would constantly illegally download music because in their minds it was like, well, it's a digital file, right? It's not the same as like stealing a card. But then you had things that came around like Spotify and Netflix and like, and I mean, in regards to like Netflix, not just Netflix, but all these different streaming services where people are paying like multiple installments of money per month for different streaming services. You know, if you think about it, just like 5 to 6 years ago, the idea of like consuming internet content, I think in our minds was always perceived as something as being free, right? Maybe illegally, but free. And I think the idea of streaming concerts perhaps might go down the same route, right? The reason why we're willing to pay for Netflix and Disney Plus or Spotify is because, you know, it saves us at the very least the hassle of like having to like BitTorrent stuff illegally or LimeWire stuff illegally. Maybe the same parallel doesn't apply nearly as smoothly to live concerts, but I think the reason why live stream concerts have gotten away with being free is because there's a certain like lo-fi-ness to them. And if you want to change the perception of that to be like, no, concert live streams can be high production values that are worth your money, it's not without precedent that that could happen. And if that succeeds, that's a major way for entertainment companies, for labels to be able to make, or at least make up for the loss of revenue that they're getting for not being able to hold live concerts. And SM, I think, has done a really great job of pioneering that, which is something that I feel like, I don't know, I've ragged on SM a lot over the past 10 years because I think there are generally some things that that they do that are just truly corny. And admittedly, when I saw this like Beyond the Live thing, when I saw that they were like going to do like not just like a live concert but like AR and whatever, I was like, this is ridiculous and over the top. I felt the same thing about SuperM as well. They're like, you know, Avengers style boy group. But I think one thing that you really have to respect them for is the idea that they know what they do well, and they're willing to capitalize on that and say to the rest of the entertainment world to be like, this is something that we've done really well in the past. This is a model that you all have perhaps not considered because you don't possess the same strengths that we do, right? Isn't that a concept? So since we have this skill set, since we have these strengths, we can do a really, really great job at this, and perhaps this is something that is worth you adopting as well. Which I think as like, I don't know, as just an Asian person who is like not used to the idea of Asian entertainment being a leader in the entertainment world, I think that's an incredibly radical and very exciting prospect. The last thing that I kind of like considered about this as I was thinking was the idea of like the fact that as I was watching this DBSK concert, there's something inherently like aggressively awkward about watching a concert live stream, because if you think that's like this grand, because if you think about it, right, again, what this really is that like it's like the performers plus backup dancers basically performing in a box with people zooming into the concert, and there's something inherently awkward and uncomfortable with that. And I think, you know, I could really easily imagine, you know, other people, many artists being like, nah, there's no way I'm gonna do that because that feels so awkward and, you know, even fake, inauthentic, whatever. It's lacking that personal interaction that you get with the audience, right? It's lacking this. It's not as good as this, right? It's not the same, and so and it's weird, and I can't be you know, expressive as a performer, whatever, right? I don't doubt that, like, you know, again, as like K-pop idols are, you know, manufactured, whatever, but at the end of the day, what they do for a living is art, and I don't doubt that the K-pop idols who are doing this sort of thing are also thinking to themselves, man, this is not the same as being able to like interact with real life humans, and this is weird. But one thing that I really admired from watching this was the level of professionalism that, you know, despite the inherent awkwardness and how things were different with this format, the inherent professionalism in wanting to still make this a really positive and worthwhile experience for everyone watching. I think that level of professionalism, that idea of like adapting to a new normal, you know, is something that not just like the entertainment world, but I think people in general could really take some cues from. Now, again, I think you could, if you really want to venture down that road, I think you could really make this kind of like an Asia, not Asia sort of like issue. You know, just from personal experience, I think you can see some little things that have been happening in the world because of this pandemic, where like some people who live in Asian countries have, I don't know, just like been able to adapt and thrive under a new normal with less resistance than like Westerners have. Because, you know, as we're looking at Memorial Day weekend, you have what I've been seeing where I live is like a bunch of folks who are like just really wanting to get back to the way things used to be, right? It's not just kind of like how do we move forward, it's more kind of like how do we get back to what we're used to, because we don't like how things have changed now, right? I want to go to the beach because it's something that I've always been doing every Memorial Day weekend, stuff like that. And so I can imagine the same kind of principle applying for something like this, right? Well, I've always done live concerts, and anything that's not what I'm used to is not as good. I didn't see any kind of like any of that sentiment during the concert at all, and I think that really, really helped in making this a really positive and non-awkward experience. There was one point where one of the fans had asked DBSK like the difference, how different it felt doing a live concert and doing like a virtual concert. Because I think as I was looking things up this morning, I think DBSK amongst all the SM groups is probably the one group who has had, bar none, like the most concert tour experience. And I say that with relative confidence, despite not having like counted the number of the concerts, because I don't have time for that, because they've been active for like 17 years, and they do concerts, like full scale concert tours in both Asia internationally as well as in Japan. So they're like average, I think at one point they were doing 2 equivalents of 2 world tours per year. So this is a group that has thrived on the live concert experience. And so if there's anyone who would be like, nah, I don't do Zoom conferences, I think TVXQ would have the right to say that. But for them to answer that question and be like, no, it's different, right? To acknowledge that, yes, this is not the same. But to still be honest and say like, no, we still feel like, I think at one point, my Korean is serving me correctly. At one point, Changmin had said that like, to be able to share in the same time and space as people, I think is the most important. And so being able to do that, I think, still brings about meaning to what they were doing. And I think that's a really important shift to be making, not just again in like concert terms, but also in like life terms, you know? So anyway, and yes, I do own one of these. I am not going to disclose how much this cost, but when you go to an actual concert, these light sticks actually blink, and I think some of them might even change color depending on the music. So if you're talking about like next levelness in terms of concert like experience, K-pop is where it's at, guys. So like, you know, these fan lights, in a regular concert, they would sync up to the music and they would blink in time, which is like epic. Now obviously that doesn't really happen with at-home concerts, but for some of the newer groups with like the more like, you know, up-to-date light sticks, this is a little old. You can download an app where where the light stick will sync up via Bluetooth and blink in time with the music while you're live streaming the concert. You can't do that with these ones because they're older. Although I think VLIVE, the app, is selling like a virtual light stick that does the same thing, but it's like, okay, yeah, whatever. But anyway, just for anyone who was wondering about that, it only works, I believe, with like the NCT and the WayV light sticks, as well as the newest version of the EXO light stick, and none of the others, so just as an FYI. For those of you who are new, this channel is kind of all over the place. If you haven't been able to tell already, sometimes I do videos like this, sometimes I do song covers. I've been doing a lot of those lately, particularly K-pop covers. I'll explain the rationale for why I do K-pop covers perhaps in a later video. And I also run a podcast. The link for that is again below, and I also have links to all the episodes on that, or for that podcast, on this channel. So if you're into any of those things, don't forget to subscribe. Share this video with someone who is thinking of watching one of these live concerts or is intrigued by the idea of changing up the format of live streaming concerts for the future. If you're into any of that stuff, share this with a friend and let me know what you thought. Alright, so have a good weekend, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye!